Do you need a studio? It's a good question, and it's one that I'm having to answer once again. At the end of this month, I'm leaving the studio. I'm not happy about it, but it's what's happening, and now I'm having to address the idea of, am I looking for another space, or am I going to float around again? In this space, what's great about it for me is a number of things, is that it's only a few blocks away from where I live. So it literally takes me 2 minutes to get here in my car. It's walkable, but I usually am carrying gear back and forth a little bit. So this studio belongs to a friend of mine. It's her studio. She has a couple of businesses. One is as a photographer and the other one is as a personal trainer, and she has courses and a fitness app as well. But she is moving in here full time at the beginning of March, and so I have to move out. Now I need to start looking for other options. So I wanted to talk about whether or not you actually need a studio to run your photography business. You don't, but it may change the dynamic and the type of work that you are able to do. The flexibility that you have is definitely affected with whether or not you have a studio. So what are the benefits of having your own studio? For me, the benefits that I see for my work are stability and flexibility primarily. Stability is a big issue for me. I want to have a space where I know that I don't have to go back and forth with other studios for rentals or availability to see if the studio is available to me or not. I mentioned in a previous video that I am no longer shooting in Toronto for a number of reasons. The rates for studios are really expensive there. The rent on a studio for 4 hours, which I would need for a 2-hour session, I need time to set up and I need time to break the set down, load in, load out, and then you do the shoot. The expense of the rental on its own is 70% of my revenue. That leaves me with a very tiny, small amount. And then what's left over after that has to cover my travel expenses, my time, my editing, my processing, the shoot, my gear, my insurance, all of those other expenses. It's not financially feasible. So stability is a key factor for me having a studio, knowing that I have a place that I can go to, I can book my client in, we have a shared calendar. If time's available, then I can just slot them right in. In fact, another benefit for me in terms of the flexibility is not only having the shared calendar, but having a studio management system. I use Sprout Studio, and I can have a scheduler attached to a booking proposal, and so I can send that off to my client and they can just select the date and time because the studio management system taps into my schedule. Sprout knows my calendar, knows the studio calendar, checks both for availability, and then gives my client available option. And then they can select a time where both the studio and I are available for the shoot. Stability, flexibility are key issues. As for the cons, primarily it's going to be cost. Rental rates, at least where I am here in Southern Ontario, are ridiculous. And that's not just commercial rates, that's also apartment rent. My rent on my apartment for a 2-bedroom is almost $2,000 a month. I could not also afford a studio that cost me $2,000 a month. There are no live workspaces in the city that I am aware of. I've looked for years. I also have a dog, so shooting in my apartment is difficult to do as well. So can you afford it? If you cannot afford to rent a studio, you shouldn't. That has a bit of a caveat though. If you are losing money, a small amount of money for your first few months, or your first maybe 3 to 6 months, a small amount of money, not a big amount, then you should look into getting a studio, because it may take time for you to get established in your studio to help bring your revenue back up. Having the stability of knowing that you have a studio available to you and you can shoot whenever you want or need to allows you to book more clients. That's been my experience. I have had to turn away clients because I could not find a studio to shoot in, and that sucks. You don't want to be in that position. The other thing is commercial landlords are not good people. In my experience, I shut down my improv company 10 years ago because of commercial landlord I was dealing with. I was just done. I was done fighting with commercial landlords for them to actually do the things that the lease said that they were responsible for doing, like maintaining the structural integrity of the building. Interestingly, the landlords here are actually fantastic, and that's been revelatory. Every other commercial landlord I've experienced and I've worked with plenty has not been good. There are a couple of books over my years of working with commercial landlords that I've found have been incredibly helpful. I will link to them below. I believe one is called Negotiating Commercial Lease. It's fantastic. It talks about how you can get free rent periods at the beginning of your lease and work that into your lease terms. You can get multiple months of free rent worked into your lease agreement, which gives you time to build out the space to your satisfaction. These books are fantastic if you are looking at getting your own studio and getting a commercial space. Now, the alternatives are that you could rent space on a shoot-to-shoot basis. If you're renting a space on a shoot-by-shoot basis, you have to make sure that the money that you're bringing in is significant enough that your rent is a small portion of your revenue. It doesn't make sense to have a big chunk of your revenue taken up by the rental expense. Studio rentals can be expensive, especially where I am. During the start of COVID, we had lockdowns in a lot of Ontario for almost a year and a half, and that put a lot of places out of business. A lot of photography studios went out of business. Where there was a lot of competition previously, there is not much competition anymore. Those spaces aren't available to rent, those inexpensive spaces. They just don't exist anymore. It might take another few years for them to come back. The other alternative, which is what I've done, is I've spent years building a network of people who have become good friends with me, other photographers, people who have their own studios. I have 3 people who will let me use their studio for free because I help them out with a lot of technology and other things that I'm good at that they're not good at, that help improve efficiencies in their business. I do that because they're friends and I love them and adore them, but 2 of those spaces aren't very close to me. The third one is right next door, and it's my friend Marta. You've seen me shoot in her studio before. I've shot videos in her studio. Let me know if this video was helpful for you. If you're considering getting your own studio, let me know what some of your options are. If you have your own studio, let me know what you feel are some pros and cons. Your experiences are going to be different than mine, but I'm very interested to hear what they are. Thanks for watching. Take care.